Hello and welcome to day 5 of Future Fest. It's the last day of our first thematic week exploring the future of cities. To those of you who have attended any of our previous talks this week, welcome back. And if this is your first event, thank you for joining us. If you're not familiar with it yet, Future Fest is a three-week-long event featuring a range of A+Award-winning architects from around the world. Next week, we'll continue this celebration of architectural innovation by inviting 5 architects to speak about a range of topics under the banner of the future of architecture. Then, during the final week of the event, we'll zoom in with 5 more talks that consider the future of materials. All of this is a way for us to warm up for the 11th annual A+ Awards, which launch this October. Stay tuned for more details on that a little later. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Hannah Finiak, and I'm the architecture editor at Architizer. Today, I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to chat with Sanjay Puri, the co-founder and principal architect at Sanjay Puri Architects. Today, we'll be discussing how cultural architecture can connect communities. While we wait for the room to fill up, I want to encourage you all to say hi in the chat box on the right side of your screen and to let us know where you're from. In one moment. While we do that, I'll share a few pointers about how our live platform works. If you're having any technical difficulties with the stream, you can click the help icon in the bottom left corner of your screen, and you'll see a few options for improving the picture, the sound, and so on. It's worth noting that there will also be a recorded version of the talk, which will be sent to your email afterwards, so you can catch up on anything you missed. If you have friends or colleagues who have missed the event, they can register afterwards to watch the talk. Thirdly, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask Sanjay at any time during his talk, just click the Questions tab on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and then type your question. If you see a question from another audience member that you'd be interested in hearing, you can upvote it and we'll aim to answer the most popular question a little later on. Finally, feel free to use the React button, which can be found in the bottom portion of the central portion of the bottom part of your screen, whenever you see anything that you'd like. If you'd like to learn more about FutureFest and to see the full schedule of our talks, you can go to architizer.com and then click on the very top article. Here we list the names, times, and dates of each talk, along with a short description of what type of content you can expect each speaker to cover. From this article, you can make note of your favorites or register to past events in order to access the recordings of the talks that you've missed. And now, finally, allow me to introduce today's speaker. Sanjay Puri is the co-founder and principal architect of Sanjay Puri Architects. Since the firm's founding in 1992, Sanjay has spearheaded dozens of award-winning projects, including everything from townships, schools, hotels, retail, and office buildings. He's been on the forefront of creating innovative design solutions that are sustainable on a large scale. Sanjay Puri Architects has been widely recognized as one of the best architecture firms of the past 30 years. The firm has been listed as one of Architizer's top 130 architecture firms worldwide and was voted the best residential firm of the year in the 10th annual A+ Awards. You can actually see all of the awards behind Sanjay on his screen right now. The 72 people strong firm strives for design solutions that are environmentally and culturally contextual, while also finding innovative new ways for people to experience these spaces. Thank you so much for joining us today, Sanjay. And without further ado, I'll pass the mic off to you.
Hi.
Just pull up your presentation. There we go.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining in. And thank you very much, Paul, Hannah, and the entire Architizer team for putting this together. This seems to be a very interesting series of topics that you're covering over a period of time. So very quickly, I'll get into the presentation. The topic is how cultural architecture can connect communities. And we have seen worldwide, just a minute. When we're thinking of cultural architecture, two typologies immediately come to the forefront. The very first one is museums, art galleries, performance spaces, and theaters, which are all across the world and which genuinely not just get the communities together, but in the case of Bilbao, for example, it's actually changed the economy of the entire city. One building can change so many lives. I mean, this is the best example of what public architecture can do and in terms of how they bring communities together. The second typology is religious buildings, which across the world again get thousands and thousands of people on a daily basis. While these two building typologies do get really large community spaces from across the world together, they are more public in nature. And while they provide the task of getting all these people together, they don't really foster communication between people. For example, you may not reach a museum and start talking to somebody who you don't know. So the buildings that we use out of necessity are the ones that can actually really and truly connect communities in the true sense. And this is very nicely illustrated in an illustration by Charles Correa, one of India's topmost architects, long ago, where he put it together in this one sketch that there are three general kinds of community spaces. One, which you need at the house level. Because let's not forget, a house is also occupied by individuals, sometimes two and sometimes three generations. So they need to have their individual spaces and they need to have a community space within their house where everyone meets. Then between a group of houses, that group could be 8 to 10 or 30 to 40 or even a couple of hundred, a community space for the middle level where all these houses connect together. And then the large community space, which generally forms spaces for all kinds of gatherings, for celebrations, for religious occurrences. So that is the larger level. So there are these three levels of community spaces which every kind of architecture must actually incorporate within any design and any typology. Now, when you look at a house, as I said, the house has to have spaces which are individual for individual members of the family and their own little individual outdoor space, and at the same time should have spaces that connect the entire community together within the house. So let's start with this house that we did in Lucknow, which while we designed it was designed for three generations, and this is now 4 years old, and already a fourth generation is living there. So four generations are living together in this five-bedroom house. That's the floor plan, where generally the ground floor provides all the larger community spaces, which means a really large living room where all the members of the family, in this case 13 now, can get together, a large dining space, a large home theater space, and then individual rooms on the upper levels. So in this particular case, the house, just to briefly touch upon the overall design, is designed at the crossroads of a very busy traffic junction. In fact, not at all the ideal place for a house, but now that's what the client had. So in keeping with the context, what we did was make the entire house into a series of concrete volumes interspersed with open courtyards, and every room has its own individual outdoor private space, and all these private spaces are screened by GFRC screens which give them privacy because it is at the crossroads of a very major traffic junction. At the same time, it reduces the noise from the outside and at the same time reduces the heat gain into the building. So it's simultaneously doing three different things. When one walks into the house, you go into this large central courtyard space, which is ventilated from the top. And by being ventilated from the top, it facilitates natural cross ventilation, reducing the heat gain by almost 30%. Like we've been to this house when it was 40 degrees outside, and without a fan on, without any air conditioning on, the house is still cool. This is another view of the large atrium space that connects the entire house. And when you come in here, you are able to see everything. This is the living room and the dining room spaces. And then these are the spaces where interstitial courtyard spaces where one walks out into the main garden space. And then each room opens into this sheltered outdoor space from where you can see outside, but at the same time, the outsider on the main traffic road cannot look inside the house. So that's another private space for the master bedroom. And this is the way the whole house looks from the outside. It's a series of concrete volumes, all exposed with GFRC screens. Very, very interesting cuboid composition. This is another house that we completed earlier this year. It's called Mirai. It's located in Rajasthan, desert climate of Rajasthan, for those of you who don't know, where temperatures are in excess of 40 degrees for 8 months of the year. So it's really very important to have a house which reduces the heat gain considerably considering the location. So in this particular case, what is done is that the south side has the least amount of openings and the north side has the maximum amount of openings. So that because the sun is always in the southern direction in India in this region, and you always get indirect light into the rooms and the heat gain is reduced drastically. In addition, there is this whole envelope around the building which provides semi-sheltered open spaces to every room inside the house. So that further reduces the heat gain. So very quickly, these are the floor plans where again, here there are three generations living here as of now. As a large living space, a large home theater space, a very large kitchen, and a larger dining at the lower level, and then the upper level are our bedrooms. So five-bedroom house. And this is the way you can see by a series of photographs how the house is completely sheltered from the desert climate of the location. And each room, this is the living room at the bottom, opening out into a nice sheltered deck space which overlooks the garden on the northern side. And the house has this complete envelope of curved brick walls, which are rendered in a terracotta lime plaster, which is again local to the location. And these are the inner spaces. So this is a large, what they call a family room here, where the family gathers together. And then there is a large formal room, which is separate. So like I said, these are the community spaces within the house for all three generations to come together. And then there are the individual spaces above. So every room has their own outdoor space as well. So the house, in spite of it being just a house, the smallest unit that somebody lives in, is still divided into private spaces and community spaces. So this is the sheltered deck at the ground level. The staircase that leads one through the open terraces to every room and the ground floor deck. Moving on to another typology, schools. Schools again is very, very important to have spaces that bring the entire student fraternity together within the school campus. So this is a small school, but it's located like this with the north point upwards, where there's a large playground. So if you notice carefully, the large spaces, which is the auditorium, which does not need natural sunlight, is placed on the southern side purposely. And all the classrooms face the north directly. In addition, there are these large vertical fin walls, which you see projecting out, which completely cut off the heat glare from the east and the west side, thereby allowing only northern indirect sunlight to come in. And then the focus of this whole school is number 10, the sheltered courtyard space which connects each one of these classrooms. So which we will see later. This is the first floor plan and the rooftop plan and a section running through the entire school. And this is how one sees the school when one approaches from the southern side, where the entire southern side is completely screen walled with all indirect light coming in from the east, west, and north. This is the west side and the east side. So all these large walls, what they're doing is completely cutting off the glare from the east and the west. And then the entire school opens up on the northern side towards the playground. So simply by design alone, one has created a school that does not require air conditioning, in spite of being in Rajasthan, which is again 40 degrees Celsius for 8 months of the year. So you make a very, very energy efficient building. But we are talking here about the community spaces. So this is the heart of the school. And this is again children playing here when it was 36 degrees outside. So at 36 degrees, this place is completely sheltered and usable throughout the day. All the students gather here at every break time and post school closing. But this is where the hub is, and this is where the community space is. All the corridors are open and naturally ventilated. So the school is a very, very energy efficient building in context to the climate. Is all the circulation spaces all naturally ventilated. This is a new school that has just started construction also in Rajasthan. And in fact, this is even more of the desert climate because Rajasthan is a large state in India and it's got different locations. This is in the heart of the desert and even, it's actually desert land all around. So it's a very steeply sloping site with an 11-meter drop from the southern side to the northern side. And we decided that we'd make the school completely sustainable and there will be no cutting of contours. So all the classrooms and the facilities that are required are actually placed on the existing contours with a large open courtyard space running through the entire school, which has steps so that you have different platforms for different activities and different groups, age groups of children to be used all through the day. The cross sections show you how the school is sited on the existing contours. And because the school had less amount of open space, we've made even the terrace usable. So you can actually walk up to any level of the terrace and it becomes a very interesting activity space and a community space overlooking the central courtyard, which is completely open for the entire school. All of this is being built by local workers from the region who we are training. We're doing it partly in adobe construction and with lime plaster. So all local building techniques are being used to create the school, which will be extremely energy efficient, deeply recessed windows to reduce heat gain, and very interesting community spaces for the children to use all throughout the day, in spite of it being located right in the heart of a desert. So this is a sheltered space that leads one from the open courtyard into the playground on the right-hand side. That's the playground, showing the connectivity from the courtyard into the playground space. So we just started construction and this school should be ready next year. This is the Prestige University, which we're doing in a city called Indore, which is again in the middle of India. Here again, temperatures rise up to 37, 38 degrees in the summer months. And that's the site. It is located on this arterial road, which runs on the perimeter of the city. And as opposed to most sites which have one road fronting one side at least, this has just a tiny mouth where you enter the site. And that's the way we planned the entire school. These are the classrooms at different levels with administrative facilities and all of that. So what you see here in the school is that it gradually goes back. So the different sections at different parts give you different scales of the openings. That's the ground floor plan. And the building keeps stepping back as it goes from the entry point towards the southeast, where it steps up more and more and is finally higher. So the idea is that this school is part of a 30-acre campus, this building, and eventually it is going to house 3,000 students. So we wanted that the entire building acts as a complete community space for the entire campus of 3,000 students whenever there is a large function or celebrations or just sporting activities as well. So these are cross sections through the school which show how large courtyard spaces are giving natural light and ventilation to the entire school space under the step terrace. And this is the way the school will be finally built. It's already finished. The interiors are going on and it should be ready by December this year, in another 3 months. So the entire school, which is a floor plate of 8,000 square meters, steps up like this, gradually from ground to fourth level, providing seating spaces and activity spaces, and most importantly, acting as an open auditorium space for any kind of stage performance or cultural activity here, bringing together the whole community of 3,000 students on its rooftop. These are views from the top looking down. And this again, being based in India in this location with the sun always in the southern direction, is all stepping down towards the north, so that when you sit here on these platforms, you're always facing the northern side and you don't have the direct glare of the sun in your eyes. These are the internal courtyards that light up all the internal spaces naturally. These are views of the inner spaces. All of this is already done and is being finished now. That's a very large cafeteria which can accommodate 800 people at a time. And these are some of the courtyards that give natural light to the library and the classrooms around. So that's the Prestige University, which will be completed in 3 months from now. And this is a residential student hostel that we built in a place called Mathura in Delhi. Now, this is how the campus looks. This is a very large campus which has existed since 30 years, and we were called in only for this small red portion site. So all the other buildings are already built, and the white is what you see, what they look like. So whoever designed them earlier had these large, long, linear faculty rooms, student hostels, administrative areas, and classrooms simply laid out in this rectangular format where all the rooms look into each other. And we got this small wedge-shaped site, which is the red portion in the center, facing a large playground. So what we've done here is we tried to see what the requirement was and how one could lay them. If you actually lay the requirements of the client, which in this case was 800 rooms, it had to accommodate 800 students, it would kind of look like this. And we had a mandate given to us, which is rightfully so, that it should be ground plus two because all the buildings in the campus are of the same height. So we tried various configurations before finally looking down at the old city streets of Mathura, where there are no straight lines, everything is organic. And organic planning, although organic, it was not really planned, it just grew and grew and grew. But these old cities have a very nice character, and you don't know what's going to come next. And that is what we wanted to create in this project. So we've laid out all the 800 hostels in this very organic manner, where all the garden areas between are all facing this playground on the northern side. And then we wanted every room to be oriented towards the north to reduce the heat gain. So if we were simply to go by the plan layout, it would look like this with east-west orientation. So we try to tilt the rooms. When you tilt the rooms, you get balcony spaces. Balcony spaces are nice, but the dean of the college said a strict no to balcony spaces because it says students misuse the balcony spaces. So we came up with this idea where each room has this wedge-shaped window, which is oriented towards the north. And then there are breakout spaces at each one of the staircase vertical circulation spines. And this is a study of the sun path at different times in different months. And what we found is that by keeping this formation of buildings, you always at all times of the day have a shadowed space to walk in or to play in. So that's the final configuration with literally every room out of the 800 rooms facing the north and reducing the heat gain substantially. Air conditioning was not required to be done in these classrooms, in these student hostels. So that's the way these wedge-shaped windows are oriented. And that's a cross section through the entire side. And this is how it looks now. So the large volumes that you see are the gymnasium and the games room and the cafeteria. And you get these very interesting organic streets all through with gardens all oriented towards the north. This is one of the public spaces, and it's very interesting to see. In fact, when we went there to shoot this building, we were speaking to some students, and the students of the entire 30-acre campus, the moment they are free at 5 o'clock in the evening, are all gathered here in this one tiny part of the campus. And we asked them why. We said that, so they all said that this is the only part of our campus that has provided these kind of community spaces which we can use, which are sheltered and gives us an interesting feeling. So here you can see all these people using these spaces. Sorry, I think I missed a slide, but that's okay. So this is the gymnasium. It's all naturally ventilated. It's done at a very, very low cost, and these buildings are finished in 6 months. So you get these streets which narrow, then they widen up, they open up, and look at these. Yeah, this is what I was looking for. So these people are sitting here at 2 o'clock in the afternoon with it being 37 degrees outside. Because of the way the entire building is oriented, you always, at whether it's morning or whether it's evening or whether it's afternoon, you have spaces that are shaded by virtue of the shadow of the buildings, the way they're done. And the gardens are usable. There's 36 degrees they're sitting outside. Also makes for very, very interesting spaces because there is no repetition. Every party you go into seems different in terms of scale and in terms of size. Also very graphic, with each building getting a slightly different color combination so that it's easy to identify. And this is a student using that bay window. So you see, it's a tiny room. He has a study desk, but he'd rather sit on that little ledge, look out towards the playground, and do his work there. So this is the street in Mathura, and this brings us to the typology of housing. How can we make housing more interesting? So this is a project that we also did in Rajasthan, where we've again taken the organic street concept of old cities and expanded on that and created this really interesting organic flow where all the vehicular movement is only on the perimeter road towards the right-hand side, and then you walk inside through open circulation corridors. And everywhere you walk in, you look at different glimpses of the landscape that surrounds you. And this is the way the plans work. And here again, on this side, there was a 16-meter contour difference. We did not cut a single contour. So in a 100-acre site, not a single shovel of mud has gone in or come out of this site. Each of the building is sited on the existing contours. So you see something which is higher, something that is lower. You actually enter into a level which you think is the ground floor, but it becomes the first floor as you travel across. So these are different views of the Ras houses, which accommodates about 500 families and is built in a very series of low-rise volumes, creating multiple community spaces in different parts of different scales all throughout, and naturally sheltered spaces everywhere, deeply recessed windows so that you reduce the heat gain. So again, here in every part, you get a different glimpse of composition of built space, open space, and the quality of space and the quality of light. These are the open corridors that connect all these spaces. And taking from the traditional culture of Rajasthan, which is really bright, people wear very bright colors there. We imbibe that in the circulation spaces as well as in the building colors. So at every point, there's something that is different to see and something different to be captured. And this is the club portion of this complex. It is now being built and will also be completed by the end of the year, where the building gradually steps down along existing contours, and this will become the large community spaces for the entire 100-acre township. This is a hotel that we completed 2 years ago, which again has very interesting community spaces created at every level. Here you have a really large garden, which uh, fronts a very large banqueting space. And here again, there was a site difference of 18 meters from the bottom to the top, rising gradually up on the southern side. So again, here there's been no cutting of contours, and the hotel is located exactly the way it was on the existing contours. So you have a large banquet at the lowest level opening on this garden. Then you have the main lobby space, which opens into the restaurant and the bar, which open onto another large garden terrace. And then you have the rooms which step back, which start with a pool terrace, and then finally go back into the rooms which have really large decks, all looking out towards this really large river, which is across the site on the northern side and hills on the southern side. So you can see simultaneously in the cross section how the building sits on the existing contours. 50% of this building is naturally ventilated and has no air conditioning. And 50% of the energy of the building comes from solar panels on the rooftop and on the rooftop of parking areas. Again, here, the indoor circulation spaces are all organic. And there are these open, naturally ventilated atriums between the rooms. It's a small 63-room boutique hotel, which sits like this on the side. So it's got these community spaces in front of every public facility, as well as large terrace spaces for each room. And this is a cross section showing how everything is cross ventilated with natural light in each part of the hotel. So this is the starting point right at the lowest level with the banquet and the garden space. And you see how on the right hand side, the banquet kitchen space has got solar panels on top. So every rooftop has been used for solar panels to generate 50% of the energy that is used in the hotel. That's again the banquet space, and then the banquet space opening out onto this large community space. And then as one enters, you have a large circulation space, and the hotel room. Again, this is the lobby level of the hotel rooms that opens up into this large community terrace space, which you can see here with a small water trough at the end. That's the connecting staircase between the public levels. And this is the naturally ventilated atrium space. On either side, each one is differently designed so that one part of the hotel, every part of the hotel has its own feel. That's the pool level deck, which again looks out over towards the river. And these rooms are cantilevered out with large 3-meter wide and 4-meter long terrace spaces, which are sheltered. That's the view that you get from each one of the rooms towards the lake. And this is the way every floor cantilevers out separately, giving different views of the lake and the hills at the back. And this is community space designed in an office building. So I think this is the last project. And this is a ground plus one courtyard office that we've created where there are these louvers that are oriented towards the north. And depending upon the time of the year, one can change the angle of these louvers so that you can get in more light or less light depending upon the weather. And this is the large garden space from where one enters the office space. And most importantly, is this the hub of the office is this large courtyard space in the center of the office, where the office literally in every break time is sitting here and using the space a number of ways, from eating lunch to having meetings and gatherings informally. That's the cafeteria. That's the building from the top. So you can see this large courtyard space, which is the community space of the office, which punctuates the entire building, and not just acting as a community space, but also facilitating natural ventilation and natural light to every part of the office. So just to summarize, in every typology, there are opportunities to create spaces that foster interaction and bring the community together. And this is the important thing that we need to do in every building type, whether it's a house or it's an educational institute or it's a housing project or it's a hotel or an office. We need to make spaces that, facilitate social interaction and get the community who is living there together more often. Thank you for your attention. I think over to
Thank
you.
you so much, Sanjay, for bringing so many incredible images. And I feel like I know most of your projects or a lot of your projects, especially the more recent ones, but I haven't seen so many like of the drawings, the floor plans for them. And I'm just blown away and seeing even more of the photographs of the interiors. It's truly incredible. And I feel so lucky that you chose to share so many with us. So for everyone who is asking also, this will be available as a recording this talk, Sanjay's talk, so you guys can download it and pause on any images that you want to look at for longer. I think I'm going to be going back and looking at some of these floor plans for sure.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Let's get started with the Q&A without any
Yeah,
further
I'm hoping I
ado.
didn't go over time. I didn't. Huh? Okay.
No, you didn't. Thank you. It was actually you were exactly on time, like the perfect time. Thank you. Um, so actually we have one question that just came up that I have been wondering similarly. It's from Julian Veres. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. He says, hello, Sanjay. What would be the main bioclimactic and architectural principles that you always follow in each of your projects? Um, and I'm really interested in that because each project has such a unique footprint and profile and materiality and even geometry. So yeah, it would be interesting to hear kind of a uniting factor as you approach each project.
So the most important thing is, especially in India, because most of our projects are in India as of now, the most important thing is to reduce the heat gain into the building. It is really important. And simultaneously, while you reduce the heat gain, you also have to ensure that there is enough natural light everywhere. So these are the two most important factors. And then everything else comes after that. How you facilitate more cross ventilation so that you don't need air conditioning except when required. Like, for example, the Noka school, the mandate has been given from before that we are not going to air condition the school. And it's situated in the desert climate of Rajasthan with 45 degrees Celsius, 8 months of the year. So it's a huge challenge, but we're going to do it and prove it. So these are two important factors.
Thank you. Um, and then, sorry, it just restarted. I had it hovering over the question. So this is a completely different question, but going back to the idea of community and culture, one of the most popular questions was by, and again, I'm so sorry to everyone if I pronounce their names wrong. I'm going to do my best. Sanjana Chaganti asks, vernacular architecture also represents culture. What role do you think it plays in connecting communities?
I think vernacular architecture can play multiple roles in connecting communities. So, for example, now what we're doing when you're doing this village, because it's a charitable school being designed for the for the girl children of all the nearby 6 villages which don't have access to education. So, in the first place, we want to actually harness the local skills of people who are working there, which are dying, which is unfortunate. So, for example, lime plaster. I don't know how many people know this, but lime plaster is a traditional Rajasthan local craft, which, when used, is a more sustainable material to be used because it has no cement. So it's natural lime, which they mix in the plaster. Simply by applying lime plaster, you reduce the temperature inside by 6 degrees above. So when there is a natural material and there are people who know how to use it, why are we not using such things? So we are actually getting people together, getting those old people to train new people so that this craft is continued and lime plaster gains popularity again because, like I said, it's a sustainable way of doing things and it also is energy efficient. It is reviving a local craft and at the same time it's reducing heat. So it's all plus plus plus. There's no minus. So in that way, yes, vernacular architecture and the crafts can help in getting people together.
Thank you for that. That's a really interesting dimension as well. I'm glad that that came up in the Q&A, because I did not realize that
You know,
that
we're
was
doing this
present in
just
so
to
many of the
expand on
projects.
that.
Yeah.
We're doing a house in stone in Rajasthan right now. It's a very large house.
Mhm.
And during the lockdown, what we did is the contracting firm did not have enough workers. So they called in the villagers. They trained the people for 2 weeks and then they got them to work. So you're training people also from the surrounding areas, not just, getting a contractor from the best place possible and then taking the easy way out.
Um, does that differ? This is a personal question, and is that something that when you are commissioned in a new area, kind of where you're maybe not as familiar with the local economy, in terms of workers and labor, that you guys kind of at the very beginning of the conception think about, okay, is that going to be a material that's easy to access with this project, and is that a workforce that's easily employable in this area?
No, we do. In fact, for the stone house that we're doing in Rajasthan, the whole reason for doing it in stone is because Rajasthan is known for its stone craftsmen. Literally any good craft that you need from stone, and it goes across the world everywhere. So they're all there. And so we've got these local craftsmen here. So this is the place where we need to build in stone. And then the other thing is that, we never insist, however complicated the building is, to get any contractor from outside of that city. So there are times when a person, like for example, the street, the hostel that is behind you is actually a building that the the client told me that this local contractor will not be able to do it. I said, no, he will be able to do it because we will be there to take him through, run him through. We will get samples made, but we have to get it done by somebody who's from here. It does not make any kind of sense to get in transport labor from somewhere else. And we did that. He made a couple of mistakes. We corrected it and we got him on the right track and he finally did it.
That's fantastic. And those are the types of stories that are often lost, I think, in projects when we just see them in images. That's really cool that that was part of that. So another question we have from Rodrigo is, what are the challenges you faced when building with the such irregular shapes? Because each of these buildings has such unique geometries. And I think that this is in specific, the kind of follow-up is, what are the reasons with working with arches on the facade? So I think that that's in reference to the one project, but I'm interested in the geometries of all of them.
Yeah, so no, we like to explore geometries and of course, because you are doing something new, like I said, like even this hostel, the guy had not done it before. So we got a full scale sample made. First, we made a model in our office. We explained to them that this is the way to do it, this is the way you cast it. So it takes a little more time in the initial stages, but finally you get your way through because let's not forget that there is a lot of talent everywhere. That house that we did in Lucknow, the 18 screens, which was the starting first project. Again, there the contractor had never worked with exposed concrete in their lives. And we got the samples made. It was not correct. We got them made again. We got them made a third time. And finally, when it was correct, then we took him to site, showed him how it's done, where it was being done in the correct way. So he then understood, he trained his people, and then finally it got done. So the idea is always that, however complex your geometry is, it still can be built. I mean, this is not complex compared to a lot of complicated stuff that is happening all over the world, right? So this is very easy. I mean, look at the complicated forms of Bilbao Museum. That's complicated. This is not so complicated.
These seem complicated in the sense of, even someone else is asking about how you decide to channel different natural light to different areas, and that just, I think when there's such irregular shapes, it does complicate those types of considerations, because it's not, you're thinking of so many different angles that the sunlight's coming from, right? So that's kind of my segue also. Anshul is very interested in hearing how your decision making behind natural light to different parts of the projects.
So, like what I showed you in the Prestige University, we were a little skeptical at first that keeping the entire building low rise and functioning with so many courtyards, will the light be enough or not? So we did that whole SDA test, the spatial daylight autonomy test. We had the software run. We realized that there are some areas which have a little less light, so we expanded those. Then we also realized that some areas have a little more light, so we reduced those. So, today you have software that allows you to physically see what the sunlight penetration is going to be in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, what will be in July, what will be in October. So you can do the entire study, you can tweak the design accordingly, and then go ahead, which is the way one should do it.
Especially when you're looking into natural passive ways of cooling as well. It's
Yes.
vital, I'm sure. Yeah, a vital part of the design process. Thank you. So then we have another question asking, most of these projects are multi-level, and how do you address wheelchair accessibility in these designs? And maybe not just wheelchair, just accessibility. Do they have different ways of connecting the levels other than staircases?
No, of course, there are elevators everywhere for wheelchair access. I mean, none of the projects is without an elevator.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then before I continue on, I'm just going to point everyone in the lower right-hand corner next to the chat and questions tab, we have a polls tab. So if anyone is interested in potentially participating in an event like this as an A+ award submitter, we would love to hear from you. You can navigate over to that polls tab at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and you can request a submission guide in order to register for the upcoming A+ awards, which are launching in October. So I'm just going to leave that there and head back to the questions. Another question we had is kind of more panning out from the design process. And I think it has more to do with the kind of overarching theme of your talk. So what Pasang is wondering, what could be the reason for community space being dead? And also adds that, sorry, one second. I'm going to just leave it there. What could be the reason for community space being dead?
It all depends on where and how you design that community space. So, for example, if you take, the Rajasthan School, which is a red-colored building, it's these classrooms. There is a bunch of classroom which is ahead. There is another bunch which is behind, and the public facilities are distributed in both parts. So students will want to go from here to there, here to there, here to there. So when you're constantly crossing something, when you're in the corridor of the school, let's say you're not even in the community space, you're still looking at that community space. So the visual connect and the physical connect are both very important for a community space to work. If you, let's say, for example, design, a very high density housing on one side of the site and you leave the other side as a playground, then that's not a community space. So that's more of just a playing space. But if you truly want a community space to act as a community space, there has to be both physical connect, which is not that you have to go out of your way to get there, but you need to be able to cross that most of the time. And you have the visual connect. That's what makes a community space.
Thank you. And then these are kind of, I'm going to mash two questions together that have to do with your use of color in the projects that you've presented. So one person asks, that says that they can see a bold use of color in most of your projects and wonders where you draw inspiration when you're selecting the colors that you use in each given project. And someone else asks specifically about your use of red, and if there's a reason behind your use of red. I think they asked that question at the time that you were discussing the school in Rajasthan, but I think you could think about it more broadly with your projects as well.
Okay. So the Rajasthan School is a terracotta red, and terracotta is a natural color. Everything in India that you see, these spots. I mean, the whole world keeps seeing them all the time. Clay, brick. This is all terracotta. It's very natural color, so it's natural. Now, if you go to the use of color in the other buildings, like the Ras houses was in Rajasthan, and Purposely, we've used yellow and orange and red because the people there are colorful. And the whole, it goes back, you have to go back into history to see why it was that way, because everything was a desert, right, in Rajasthan. So people used bright colors to stand out against the desert drop. They used white clothes. The men wore all white and they had colored turbans. And the women wore complete color from the jewelry to the clothes. Everything is vibrant and is colorful. So there, the colors came from that. In the hostel, what we use is just primary colors, very minimal amount, only in the soffit of the window, and that was to identify. So color can be used in a number of ways. So A, it is contextual. B, it's taking from the culture, and C, it is providing identity. So in this particular case, now you have 800 rooms. Okay, so how do you identify with your block? You don't want to say block one and block two and block three. That's so nameless. So when you have like the yellow one, so it's like the yellow block is mine, so the red block is mine, the blue block is mine. Just makes it easier.
That makes a lot of sense when you say 800 rooms. It really sticks out. And we've been speaking about this week about people wanting to kind of feel pride in saying, this is where I live, and from the outside also, not just the interior. So
Yeah.
I see that especially with this project, the street. And I have a question that's about this project specifically also, and I think maybe it's just that you'll need to clarify to this audience member. But they're wondering how the tilted ledge windows work, and they wondered if it would have created a disconnection with the outdoors and the outdoor views. So maybe it's just clarifying that that's pointing people in different directions while ensuring that they maintain their privacy from one another.
Yeah, so there are two important aspects. The first reason to orient these windows this way was to orient all the rooms towards the north, as I explained in the site. The buildings are on an east-west axis, but the large playground of the campus is in the north. And we wanted to orient. So if you sit in that bay window like that student was sitting, you actually get to see the playground from your room. So 800 rooms are able to look out at that playground, which is towards one end outside of this site. So that was the whole reason. And when you orient rooms towards the north, you reduce the heat gain. Second point. Third thing is that because the buildings are parallel, kind of parallel to each other, although they are angled, this gives them privacy. So there are three things being done by these windows.
Thank you so much just for clarifying that. Yeah, and I'm just trying to see if there are any other questions. I think that we've got a lot of them. We're doing really good. Thank you again so much for sharing all of these images and for making sure that we've answered all of the questions, I believe, in the Q&A, which is incredible because we had so many. I feel like I've been rapid firing them at you for 20 minutes. If there are no more questions, then I think I'm going to wrap it up here and just thank you so much, Sanjay, for this brilliant presentation and for taking the time to speak with us today and for sharing so many of your projects, both through the A+ Awards and through your profile on Architizer. It's such a full profile. I've flipped through and clicked on all of the projects myself, and it's so nice that there are so many images uploaded there. For everyone who's watching, thank you for attending. Thank you for this lively comments thread and the Q&As. We're going to be back next week on Monday for Future Fest. We'll be entering week 2, which is going to be the future of architecture. Michael Green of the Vancouver-based firm Michael Green Architecture will be taking the stage at 1 p.m. Eastern Time to discuss the timber revolution, and we hope to see you all there. So thank you for everybody for attending. If you've missed the beginning of this talk with Sanjay or want to, like I said earlier, go back and take a closer look at the images by pausing on the images in the PowerPoint that interest you, you'll receive an email of this recording in your inbox shortly after we finish, which you can then download and watch at your leisure. So again, thank you so much, Sanjay. And to everyone else, we're going to leave the poll up, and you can still keep responding in the chat thread after we end the event. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Thank you all for listening in, and thank you very much, Paul and the Architects team. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great evening, Sanjay.
You too.